This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, the producer finds risk all around. Risk in the markets, risk out along the roads. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this weekend's broadcast with Mr. Pearson. It's the other guy. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you in person, Max. It's great to be getting back together. And I tell you what, there's a lot of folks standing together watching the sky, hoping some moisture is going to fall out of there.
You know, we've really seen the extremes, all right. I noticed, though, the drought monitor map this week improved a little bit. Greg Solier, it was very modest improvement, not much.
That's right. Small areas of the far northern Corn Belt through Wisconsin, very modest area through northern Illinois. Otherwise, a good part of the central and southern complex in good shape. And a couple of dry spots through Ohio. Improvement through New England. Southern areas will have seen improvement across the mid-Atlantic region coming off Elsa. But here's the story. Little or none expected improvement-wise till much later in the fall and winter season here and across the western states, despite a robust monsoon setup over sections of Colorado and New Mexico. We'll take a look at the rain forecast. Plenty of it coming up this week.
Well, it's a story of extremes, isn't it?
It is. It is. You see reports of 12, 14-inch rainfalls, and then you've got folks that haven't seen rain in months. Max, it's tough. But there are folks in the Dakotas watching for rain, and USDA is paying attention. Two senior officials had the chance to travel up to the Dakotas to see just how bad it really is up there. Al Gustin had a chance to talk with farmers and ranchers in North Dakota, and he filed this report.
These cows are leaving North Dakota, destined for a slaughter plant in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Many North Dakota ranchers have been selling cows. Kyle Shively has sold half his herd.
And went out to the pastures and there was no water in most of them. And
stock water supplies are adequate in only about a fourth of the state. The drought is in its second year. Here at the Rugby Livestock Auction, the cattle sell-off started in May.
So some guys that might calf a little earlier, once the calves get bigger, they pull the calves off and they bring the mamas to town.
In many cases, cows with their calves are being sold. This market sold 800 to 1,000 cow-calf pairs each week through the month of June. The pairs are going as far away as Texas and Oklahoma.
realistically, I think right around this Rugby area in Towner, I think 50 to 75% of these cows got to go find a different home, whether it's for the summer or, you know, forever.
2/3 of the state's rangelands are in poor to very poor condition.
The way it looks right now, I'm going to have a hard time coming up with 100 bales of hay on the hay land that I normally hay. So
Land that would produce at least 1,500 bales in an average year. Agronomist Josh Brandt showed us some spring wheat fields.
Generally, most stuff is going to be in that 10 to 15 bushel for small grains. This is by far the driest I've seen, and you find a rare, decent field of corn, but they're not looking so great either.
About half of the state's spring wheat, barley, and canola crops are rated poor to very poor. All of the state is now in some stage of drought. 150 miles to the southwest of Rugby.
This field of oats should be 3 feet tall. It's obviously not going to make oats. It's too short to cut for hay. The farmer was going to graze it, but because it is so drought stressed, the nitrate levels in this oats are so high that it's actually poisonous to livestock.
Not only has precipitation been well below average for 2 years, temperatures in June were about 6 degrees above average.
It started tillering, but then those tillers just died off.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Al Gustin.
Thank you, Al, for that report. And folks, we're still talking drought issues. Our good friend Tommy Grisaffi is here with us to talk markets, but he's actually physically up in Minot, North Dakota doing a crop tour. Tommy, thanks for joining us. What are you seeing around the state of North Dakota?
Well, Mike, we started, my friend Don Wick and I from the Red River Farm Network, we started in Grand Forks, and that's some of the best dirt in the whole valley. Surprisingly, the wheat's even poor in the Red River Valley. Now, what's interesting is we've had some really beneficial rains here last few weeks, so I don't want people to get confused. The corn and beans are actually starting to perk up around North Dakota, at least in certain areas that receive timely rains, and they keep getting spoon-fed. But the damage to the wheat, the over 105-degree temps and the wind, did something to this plant, and none of us are old enough to ever remember 105-degree temperatures and 30-mile-an-hour winds. So a large majority of the wheat, what's done is done, the damage is done. There's still some pretty good optimism for corn and beans, Mike.
Gotcha, Tommy. On the wheat front, as you look at this market, spring wheat definitely caught on. We had a rally early in the spring as the dryness continued, but it's kind of petered out. Now that you're seeing this crop firsthand, what do you expect to see as we get into the spring wheat harvest?
Well, if you're out there watching this show and you just heard there's a problem, it's been hot in North Dakota, I don't know where you've been living. So we came into the spring in a drought. And a lot of the problems, when you talk to the old timers about how could this be happening or what was it like in '88, we never went into it this dry. And so as we go into harvest, we're seeing problems with the wheat. As you know, someone who fed cattle, we stopped by an extension agent yesterday, and even the wheat that's in poor quality and low bushels, even if the ranchers wanted to bale it up, it has large amounts of nitrates. And I just learned about this yesterday and how they test it. And we watched 10 samples be tested. 9 of the 10 samples were loaded with nitrates. As you know, Mike, you can't feed that to the animal. And so the farmer has a real problem. Do they even bale it up and try to blend it, mix it? Or do they wait and assume there's going to, or hope there's going to be some payment for this once in 100, once in 200 year drought we're experiencing here in western North Dakota?
Boy, it is really something, and it's been a long time coming, and I guess we'll just have to watch as this summer wears on. Tommy, it's also been a long time coming for corn prices to be where they are. This past week we have seen some phenomenal volatility. Looking at the December new crop corn contract, it seems like that 520 to 525 level has been a floor. We're bumping up against it this week. Where do we go from here in new crop corn?
I'm smiling because whenever I go on the show with you, I like to watch what I had said before. And last time I was on with you, you had asked, was 550 a ceiling? And it was for a few minutes, and then we busted out. So we've been to over $6 3 times, but we just never stay there long. And we've touched the lower 5s about 3 times, and we never stay there long. But there's some underlying things going on in the world with the stock market, interest rates collapsing, not going up. Interest rates actually came down a lot this week. And there's some things brewing that are starting to make people do a little bit of the old risk-off trade, not to mention cooler temperatures. And I don't want people to be fooled in watching this show. If we ruin our corn crop in North Dakota, 97% of America could still have a pretty good chance at a corn crop. So I'm in just one little sector of the United States. My folks, we work with advanced trading in Illinois, Iowa. Things are getting better there. And the problem, Mike, as you know, on social media, is it's real easy to come up to North Dakota, take pictures of a bunch of dead wheat, but no one would go on a crop tour and take a bunch of pictures of beautiful wheat, and no one would definitely retweet them. So there's like social media loves when something bad happens, and when good things happen, which is starting to happen in the corn crop, the price goes down. I would imagine, as we noticed the last few days, as the price goes down, we see some exports perk up. And so we sold some soybeans the other day, and that kind of keeps me optimistic that dips will be bought by the outside end user.
All right, we will be back. We're going to talk soybeans. We're going to talk livestock, a little bit of everything with Tommy Grisafi from Advanced Trading when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're talking markets with Tommy Grisafi from Advanced Trading. And Tommy, we talked about the challenges that producers are having in particular parts of the country getting this corn crop grown. For those folks that look like they're going to have a crop out there in the field, what should the marketing approach be now that we've crossed that 4th of July threshold?
Well, Mike, it's time to pick up the phone and make a cash sale. Futures and options are great. That's what we do. The money's made in actually selling the product. I always tell people no one's ever made money growing corn, wheat, and beans. They've made money selling corn, wheat, and beans. I guess someone could argue with you that the government will send you money if you don't grow corn, wheat, and beans. But the real art of grain marketing is that cash sale. I'd love you to pick up the phone, make a cash sale. If you want ownership through a call or call spread, call someone you trust and get that position on. But it's time to sell grain for the growers who are really growing it.
Now, Tommy, I mean, that's kind of a tough proposition when we've watched this market move almost $1 to the downside in the past 5 days. Even in here at 5.25, 5.30 December corn, you're interested in making some cash sales.
Absolutely, because the price you would buy that call or call spreads at a much lower level than what you would have done it before. And there was so much fear, Mike, coming into that 4th of July holiday that we're in this big drought, and that droughts have always rains in the forecast, and they don't happen. When you truly get a rain through the end of June and the 4th of July, when it really starts raining in the end of June and July, it's time to sell grain, regardless of price. If you're worried about the price going up, I know a guy, and I know a lot of guys and gals who can help you from there on out.
Absolutely. A lot of trustworthy folks to help you in the futures and options side of the equation. But Tommy, I got to take your attention over to the soybean market. Of course, we're in July. We're still, a few weeks away from that crucial month of August for the soybean crop. There's still some weather risk in that market. Soybeans for the next month, 6 weeks. What do you expect to see price-wise? And same question, should growers be making some physical sales?
Soybeans are a little trickier. I'd like to be more protected with a put option. Now, if you're in the Midwest and you like the way your soybeans look, you might feel more comfortable doing that. But in general, you see last year, we had all the potential for a good soybean crop, and then that crop was actually, I would say, ruined or went back tremendously without those August rains. So in all my years of trading, I've seen years where we make a pretty good corn crop and then slowly start to lose the quality in the bushels in the soybean crop. So we've lost our drama. I think corn's losing its drama, its weather story, its huge volatility. I think that's coming in, and soybeans will be the one that lead from here. One little pointer, Mike, keep an eye on canola. I just recently paid for lifetime quotes, real-time quotes at canola. And when you look at the heat and the damage from the northern plains and Canada, if this is a soybean oil-led market, keep an eye on those oil seeds. If we have a poor soybean oil crop, and if we don't finish strong in August, I just want to have that put under the soybeans, maybe have a $13 floor, and wait to see those August rains. And then you know what to do. Pick up the phone and start selling.
Absolutely. Tommy, earlier in the show, we heard from Al Gustin up in your part of the world, North Dakota, talking to ranchers who are liquidating cow herds. Tommy, this cattle market has been struggling for a while. We're on an uptrend. Looking out through this fall, do you expect to see some strength come into the live cattle and feeder cattle sectors?
I do, Mike. The overall mathematics of cattle, if we're going to stay around $5 for corn for multiple years and have this volatility, and also meal and DDGs are expensive, we can't have low-priced cattle. So if someone wants to raise this beautiful animal and lose money doing it, they're going to do it with the mathematics. So the only way to work through that is to gently get that back end of that cattle market rallying. And if you look out to the curve, there's a lot better prices ahead. Hopefully we can stay and we don't see any black swan events with the stock market crash or any type of variant talk. So I like buying cattle on dips, and of course the rancher needs to be selling them and hedging them at profitable levels.
Indeed they do. Tommy Grisafi from Advanced Trading.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform. Combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Well, it's time to talk technology, and with the Farm Progress Show just around the corner, our good friend Chad Colby is taking a look at what to expect as that event draws near.
Are you getting excited about the 2021 Farm Progress Show? Hi everyone, I'm Chad Colby, and to say the least, I sure am. You know, Farm Progress companies did a great job with the virtual Farm Progress Show last year. I took part in that, and I got to see some of that equipment, and most importantly, got to share that technology with you. On the tech segment, I love to talk about new equipment and the new technology with it. But I realize that for a lot of you, you need to see it in person. You want to talk to those factory reps. You want to check out this technology. And we really didn't get a chance to do that with all the new model introductions last year due to the pandemic. Well, great news. Make your plans for the 2021 Farm Progress Show, because it's all going to happen right here. This past week, I had a chance to cruise down to Decatur, take a look at the crops, look at the show site, check things out, and I'm happy to report things are progressing very well. Over the next several weeks before the show, we're going to share with you some of that technology that you're going to see this year. Do you remember your very first Farm Progress Show experience? Boy, I sure do. It was with my dad. It was in Brimfield, Illinois. And I remember my dad catching a little grief from Mom because, well, Dad took me out of school, which was a big no-no in the Colby household. But I can tell you this, there'll be a lot of folks that'll make their first trek to the Farm Progress Show, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Max and Mike, do you remember your first experience at a Farm Progress Show?
Well, thank you, Chad. Farm Progress Show is getting close. And Max, I don't know that I specifically remember my first Farm Progress Show. I'm sure like a lot of our viewers, I had the chance to go to a lot when I was a kid, traveling with Dad, getting to see the people. And one of the things that I remember about traveling to the shows as a young person was the size of the machinery, just blowing my mind. And then the connections. Dad would walk around a corner, hey, and then there's the waving and the hugging and the connecting with friends that Dad probably hadn't seen in a year. And those are one of the things I love that about Farm Progress.
Your dad never knew a stranger, to be sure, but I remember my first Farm Progress show. It was west of Chicago, Malta, Illinois, and it was 1975. And what I remember was watching Orion Samuelson at work. I was awestruck watching him work in a slurry store.
Oh.
Big manure collection tank.
You bet.
Huge. It was so big, there were people sitting inside, of course, many rows of people watching Orion perform the radio broadcast of the Farm Progress Show. The grandeur of that show has been a hallmark, along with the fact that you get to see the equipment working in the field.
Right. You get to see it working. You get to get up close and in person. One of the first years I went as an adult, I went on behalf of AGCO and had a chance to climb around in all their new combines. They were rolling out some new equipment, and they were taking me behind the scenes. And it's an experience you can't get too many other places but the Farm Progress Show. Max?
One thing I remember at the Farm Progress Show was watching your dad do a superb Orion Samuelson imitation. And he had no idea, your father had no idea that Orion and I were walking up behind him. Orion tapped him on the shoulder, and your dad dropped to the ground in shock that here was the legend Orion Samuelson behind him.
Absolutely. Dad loved imitating his hero, Orion.
He did it well. There's more coming up on this edition of This Week in Agribusiness. We'll talk about some of the safety, some of the risks out along the road. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness, where we want to spend a couple of minutes talking about your cyber security. It's in the news on almost a daily basis now, and we really got a wake-up call back around Memorial Day when JBS, the big meat packer, had a significant hack. John Hoffman joins us here from the University of Minnesota, cybersecurity expert, to talk a bit about this. John, I guess that really was a wake-up call, wasn't it? It showed us that the food and agriculture system has a lot of vulnerability.
It really does, and this applies from the farm all the way to last mile at the grocery store or your restaurant. Everybody today uses the internet. People use computers to do everything, and that includes people at production agriculture level.
The farmer out there, many of them are struggling just to get good high-speed internet access. And maybe in their mind on the ranch in Wyoming or South Dakota or on the farm in Minnesota or Iowa, they're thinking, hey, they're not going to pick on me, are they?
Yeah, that kind of mentality is what's hurt a lot of businesses already in the cyber world, thinking, it won't happen to me. Guess what? It'll happen to anybody they can reach out to. And with what happened with some of these more recent attacks where they used distributed software, and they piggybacked on the updates to put malware into networks, even if you're on a dial-up, if you call up and do an update on some application that you have and they've penetrated that application, they can get to you. They can get to anybody. And many of these attacks are very indiscriminate. They're literally casting a wide net to see whose network they can get into and whose systems. And by the way, everything is vulnerable. I mean, you may have, let's say that you've got security cameras out at a milking parlor on a dairy operation, and those security cameras are tied into a computer network on your farm. And that network is tied to the internet, either broadband or even if you're, using a rather slow link, you're still tied in. Those devices can present vulnerabilities to you if they're not secured.
Someone might think, well, I have a good internet service provider. They help protect me in some way. Is that a valid belief?
They do protect to a certain degree. However, let's look at some of these examples that have just happened. If somebody's sending out updates to a software package. Let's say it's a John Deere update for the tractors who use GPS and have some kind of motherboard in them that's controlling how the tractor operates. Well, if that malware gets attached to that update coming out to your tractor, your internet provider, the ISP, is not going to be able to filter that. So you have to be careful about what you load, how you load it, where did it come from, and validate it before you load it on your system.
I subscribe to internet security. I pay extra for somebody to protect me, and I try to update that. How well am I protected then?
Well, you're better off if you do that. There are a number of companies that provide pretty good levels of protection. There are anti-malware programs. There are programs that actually you can load on your computer. They're based on subscriptions, like Malwarebytes. I'm not endorsing them. There's just one out there that's fairly widely used. You put it on your computer and it actually monitors things coming into your network and on your system and will warn you if something looks suspicious. So there are services like that. There's also companies that will do active monitoring on your network.
You really have to be careful what you open up, don't you? And many of us get a ton of stuff coming our way.
One of the favorite ways for the bad guys to penetrate your system, whether it's ransomware or denial of service or whatever they're doing, are phishing via emails. Be careful what you open up. Be careful what's attached. If you don't know where it came from, or you're not familiar with what's coming in with that email, don't open the email, and certainly don't open the attachments.
But what about that device that we carry around with which we can also access email and the internet?
The phone, cell phones. And people use cell phones out working with their equipment on the farm. The cell phone is just as vulnerable because you open up an OS, an operating system, in that cell phone. You open up email, particularly if you tie your cell phone through Bluetooth or some other means to your farm network, a lot of damage can occur. You have to be very careful about what you do with your cell phone.
Bluetooth. I never thought about that, but that's another angle off of this whole access system, isn't it?
It is. Anything that connects one device to another is actually creating a mini network, and they can move through those networks and they can take advantage of the connectivity that you use as a convenience. So there has to be a balance between the convenience you want and the risk you're willing to accept.
Sometimes we're traveling and maybe we want to access Wi-Fi and we think, okay, wait a minute, I'm 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet over the Earth's surface. I'm not vulnerable here. Are you safe anywhere, John?
Not completely. In fact, I rarely use public Wi-Fi anywhere. I don't go to a coffee shop or a restaurant and use their Wi-Fi. All of those have much greater probability of being compromised. So my advice is you only link to trusted networks you're familiar with, networks that are password, encrypted, password protected, something that you have high confidence in.
The farmer out in a remote area, just to come back to an earlier point, might be saying, okay, I'm out here, I'm a lone wolf out here, they're not going to worry about me, they're going to go after the big targets. Isn't that the case really, though? They're going to go after somebody who can be a big hit for them.
That's true, but think about the farmer who might be a contract operator for a large company, whether you're raising sows or pig production, you're in poultry, you're doing production agriculture, harvest. You may be part of a larger group of people working with a big company. One of the tactics here is to attack everybody in their network, because that's a better way to bring about the response they want from the bigger company if everybody involved pressures the bigger company to pay the ransom to clear out what's happened. So no, nobody's invulnerable to this.
John,
everybody's a potential target.
John, thanks for sharing the insight with us. We sure appreciate your taking the time. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Thanks for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. Max, as summer goes along, a lot of folks are out traveling for the first time really since coronavirus, and there are tractors on those roads in rural America.
Many farmers have a story of a near miss, and some were actually hit out there. They will never forget it if they live to tell about it. Linda Loveland in North Carolina talked to a couple of farmers who did indeed survive horrific accidents with other vehicles.
I definitely think about it anytime I'm out on the 4-lane highway. I think about that day in February and what happened and how lucky I am that I survived it.
Jimmy Cowan will likely never forget the crash that nearly took his life, even if he can't remember all the details about it.
That whole day seemed like about 45 minutes.
What Cowan can recall, how that February morning started behind the wheel of the tractor on the way to feed the cows.
I guess I'd left the house about 8 o'clock that morning and took 2 rolls of hay up to a pasture, got them fed, and I was coming back home. It was around 8:40 in the morning. I had came off from a 2-lane road back on the 4-lane, heading back toward home. I had made the left-hand turn and was in the right-hand lane, flashers on, slow-moving vehicle sign on, and I was going through a long straightaway with plenty of visibility. I glanced up my rearview mirror and I saw a truck way off in the distance. Didn't think anything of it at all. Went back to driving. A friend of mine's got some cattle in a pasture to the right. I glanced down at those. I remember looking at his cattle, and then I don't remember anything else.
The Highway Patrol estimates the truck's speed at 55 miles per hour when it hit Cowan's tractor, which was doing 13 miles an hour. The impact pushed the tractor 80 feet down the road, caused it to flip over, and send Cowan out the window.
They found me on the shoulder of the road, laying face down in a mud puddle. They transported me by ambulance to Mission Hospital. I had a lot of staples in my head and stitches, and my right ear was down to the cartilage. I cracked some vertebrae in my back. I've got some scarring on my side.
3 weeks later, Cowan noticed other health issues.
I was having headaches. I was very forgetful. I started having dizzy spells, and especially if I would bend over or look straight up in the air, I would get real dizzy. I could drive and all fine, but if I moved my head real quick or try to play with the kids or bend over working on something, I would have to grab hold of something or fall over because of the dizziness. But all of that's behind me now, and I'm very, very blessed.
Blessed because Cowan knows his story could have had a deadly ending. Fatalities are 5 times more likely in accidents involving farm vehicles, and 82% of farm equipment crashes involve a non-farm vehicle. They tend to happen in large farming communities, suburban areas, and on high-speed roadways.
We have to share the road, you know.
Ricky Betts farms with his brother, Ronnie, around Harnett and Wake counties.
Since 1977.
Since that time, he's seen incredible growth.
A lot more subdivisions, a lot more, road construction and everything. So I'd say the last couple of years has, really amped up.
Betts says traffic has also amped up.
It's horrendous. Certain times of the day that it's just about to be impossible.
Farmers have to get on the road to do their jobs. While they'd like to avoid rush hour, that's not always an option. During that time, backups began quickly.
They're running 60 mile an hour. It doesn't take any time from the road being clear to having 40 or 50 cars behind you.
Betts says that's when drivers take dangerous risks.
You get people that are late for a meeting or whatever, and they're trying to get around. They may take some unnecessary chances trying to go around, when they really don't have the space or there's some oncoming traffic. I know they've got to get where they've got to go, and I'm going to let them around just as soon as I can. But I just can't pull over as soon as one car gets behind me because they don't know what obstacles there are on my side of the road up ahead.
At the end of the day, farmers, including Betts and Cowan, plead for patience to ensure everyone gets home to their families safely.
I want to go to heaven, just not today if I can help it.
Our thanks to Linda Loveland at the North Carolina Farm Bureau for sharing that story. And it allows me to remind you, many of you are in corn country where the corn is tall. And at those rural intersections, the view is obscured. You can't take those intersections for granted. After I posted in the social media the other day about those corn corners and the collisions that occur, several had stories to share. In some instances, they had been badly injured or they had friends that they lost because of accidents out there. Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not? I think those of us who have seen a few growing seasons sometimes like to hearken back to the past and recall, was it this bad before? Greg, I was thinking about 1995 the other day.
Okay.
That was a very expansive summer of heat, as I recall. People were dying from the heat then.
That's right. I remember '88 early on into my weather career with a guy by the name of...
That was a drought.
Yeah, that was a drought year. Yeah, that was a tough one. And heat as well. And it's heat across the Pacific Northwest. We've been able to really spark a couple of thunderstorms. The problem is you bring in this very shallow marine layer type air, you lift it over the Cascades or over the northern Rockies, and you make these dry base thunderstorms. They are lightning producers, and so yes, propensity for fires to be on the increase, and they'll be just that here for this week. Little change into the early part of the week. Downslope on the eastern side of the hot ridge. A couple of showers and thunderstorms, nothing to make any substantial kink or improvement to the drought pattern across the Dakotas. Again, it'll be El Nino and the fall and winter season before we get anything of significance into that part of the country. Little change in the Pacific Northwest. The heat continues on. Maybe a random shower thunderstorm of no measurable consequence, except for maybe coastal areas later on to the week. Cascades back towards the Pacific coast. And the same applies to the desert Southwest. Caveat to that, though, dew points in the low to mid 60s the past couple of weeks into Colorado, New Mexico. And so, yeah, a couple of downpours have been kicked up in the shower and thunderstorm business of the monsoon setup into areas of the Southwest High Plains, at least the dry time of late there, allowing for opportunities to put a wrap on winter wheat harvest under the southern plains. There is a front approaching, more marine layer air, slight cooling into the valleys of California. Good luck on the irrigation supply there. Next to nil, the hot weather across the plains and high and dry central and southern plains too later into the week.
All right, take us right down through the heart of the country.
Okay, and I tell you, it's been haves versus have-nots. Too much, too little. The drought here, cool air. The heat here eased somewhat, but the problem is converging wind fields along these boundaries, and you've seen it already over some parts of the Corn Belt in excess some of the rainfall the past couple of 2 or 3 weeks, and little change this week. A boundary next to the jet stream pattern west to east. Disturbances ripple along it. Showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, will make some drought improvement into the northern and western Corn Belt and backed it into the flooding and probably severe mode into the eastern and southern complex. So down south we go again. A little weak tropical system. I'll tell you, down here in the Big Bend area off of Corpus Christi, almost a couple of feet of rain over the past week to 10 days. Little improvement to any needed dry time here in the Gulf Coast area, and little change to the maps and charts. Central and southern plains, hot, maybe an errant shower thunderstorm. The tropics, again, busy, but weak disturbances in the Gulf of Mexico.
What about the eastern part of the country? Still dry up in New England, right?
That's right. Northern and central New England. Some improvement of late down south, and again through parts of the Great Lakes areas, especially through Michigan, recent improvement. More to come this week. Cool high pressure, the clockwise flow here. South winds along this warm front. The air piles up, low pressure along it, and here's the jet stream pattern west to east, and you get these clusters and these batches of showers and thunderstorms to propagate on through. Probably heavy and severe. Still severe weather potential at this point in the summertime season, and some healthy downpours as well. Maybe some additional recharge into the northeast New England. Into the southeastern states, a weak system down towards Corpus again. Tropics across the eastern Gulf and the Atlantic for now. Early in the week are quiet, but a deep supply of moisture means showers and thunderstorms both early and late into the week across the southeastern states, and we'll keep an eye on the southwest Atlantic later into the week too.
Now Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you. Some of you may recall the prediction earlier this year. There could be maybe a dozen tropical storms this year, named systems. Greg, it seems awful early to have this far down the list that we've worked on those storms already.
Yeah, already into the E. Elsa last week making her way through Florida into the mid-Atlantic region. That was okay because we do have some drier locales across sections of the Carolinas. But again, things cook up later in the week over the southwest Atlantic. Here's a couple of systems down through the Rio Grande. Big rains of late. Big Bend area of Texas. More to come there. But look at the Corn Belt, including some of the dry, drought-ridden areas of Iowa, maybe southern Minnesota, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, we we've already had buckets of rain, more than a foot in some areas the past month and a half into the southwestern and central Corn Belt. So the specter of flooding is back into play here. Some improvement through the upper Midwest, spotty at best across the Pacific Northwest. A couple of downpours in through the monsoon season. That's ramped up into parts of the desert Southwest.
Some of the folks looking at good crop prospects right now won't welcome those additional rain amounts. They don't need it.
That's right. Along with that, and it's been unusual. You usually don't get a lot of severe weather this time in the summertime season, but it may play on out. Note the deep tropical moisture supply, cloudiness keeping temperatures below average here. The heat to the west into the northeast and New England. From a moisture standpoint, we'll take it in the southwestern part of the country. Things cook across the Gulf Coast, southwestern sections of the Atlantic. Look at the plume of moisture northward, and in particular the I-70 corridor on eastward. So some drought improvement expected, but at the same time, more standing water and flooding potential over parts of the far eastern and southern Corn Belt.
Oh, my goodness. That's a mixed bag for some of the county fairs. Love to see the cooler temperatures, but they don't want the rain. What about the week of July 26th?
Yeah, temperatures, really under control from a livestock standpoint as well, with the exception of over the drought areas. That dry ground begets a dry, hot weather pattern. Here it is for the Dakotas on westward. You get moisture in the ground, Gulf winds, Gulf moisture, cloudiness, and temps a bit below average, but very high humidity. Southern states into the Ohio Valley, and from the Ohio to the east and south, still a busy weather pattern. Southeastern states, a lot of rain in the forecast. Back to dry time, increasing dryness and drought from the Dakotas on westward.
For the week of August 2nd, where will the heat be?
From a temperature standpoint, well, I tell you, it's nothing all that unusual. A stripe of somewhat above average here across the upper Midwest. Northern Plains still a bit cool-ish down across the Gulf Coast area. And an active weather pattern for the southeastern portion of the country. The dry area, much needed, expands eastward into the Midwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
They called him Gramps, not the farmer. That was the tractor's nickname. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store-Lock Tool Cabinets. You've heard me talking about their superb quality. Well, you can see those cabinets at the Half Century of Progress coming up in August and the Farm Progress Show. Lean on one. See how solid it is. Open the drawers. StoreLock.com to get more information. Well, the M&W Gear Company carved its place in agriculture history by making parts that made tractors work better. They made those parts not just for International Harvester, but especially for IH tractors, but other brands too. And a farmer in Illinois, Bill Burnham, has made it his mission to help preserve the history of the M&W Company, not by just collecting the parts, but by displaying them on a tractor from back in the day. Oh, it gets better than that. Bill has the actual tractor that M&W used to demonstrate those parts, and it was nicknamed Gramps. And it was taken to farmer tractor pulls and other events back in the 50s and 60s so M&W could show to farmers how a tractor designed to offer 35 horsepower could deliver something like 60 horses out there in the field. This 81-year-old farm tractor looks a lot better than it did when it was displayed by M&W some 65 years ago. Bill has patiently and masterfully restored Gramps with the goal of having him ready for this year's Half Century of Progress show. And in a tent there at Rantoul, Illinois next month, my farmer friend Bill Burnham will share the M&W story. And along with other farmals from the M&W lineage that he has brought back to life, there will be Gramps, the special souped-up Farmall M made 81 years ago. Well, Mark Stock has combines on his mind this weekend, talking about the harvest season ahead. Let's check in to get his report from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. The fall harvest will be here before we know it, and we want to draw your attention to the Big Iron July 14th online auction that features some nice combines. API out of Hatch, New Mexico will be selling a Case IH 7230 combine. They've also got an Orthman 1010 Warrior grain cart. Van Berkel Farms out of Sioux Center, Iowa. They're going to sell a 2011 John Deere 9770 combine. They also have a 635F flex head and a John Deere 612C 12-row 30 corn head. Dale Birkland is from Volga, South Dakota. He's got a New Holland CR 9060 combine and a New Holland 740 35-foot flex head and a trailer. Check out his 2010 New Holland 98D corn head as well. We also have some additional equipment selling. Dale Hansen is from Morgan, Minnesota. He's got John Deere and Vermeer round balers, plus he's got a white 6180 16-row 30 planter We've got a nice lineup of equipment that will sell here on BigIron.com. If you're looking for semi-trucks, if you're looking for grain trailers, we've got a wide variety of those items as well. So check out the Big Iron July 14th auction and bid with confidence, as everything sells with no reserves and no buyer's fees on our July 14th online sale.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
Well, folks, this week in Agribusiness is proud to continue our salute to FFA. This week, we're talking to the folks from Missouri, the Show Me State. Abigail Miller, the Missouri FFA First State Vice President, is joining us. Abigail, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and I'm curious, what got you involved in FFA to begin with?
Thank you so much for having me. So my father was an ag advisor in Columbia, Missouri. That's about an hour north of where I live now. And he was an advisor for, well, way longer than I've been alive. And so I grew up going to FFA meetings and national convention. And so even when he retired and we moved down to where we currently live in Eldon, Missouri, right around Lake of the Ozarks, I knew that I wanted to be involved in FFA. And it was just the amazing advisors that I have and have had in the past and their impact on me that I've become so involved and had the wonderful opportunity to serve as a state officer this year.
So tell me a little bit about what you expect here this next year serving as a state officer. What will be your role?
So the biggest role and the one I look forward to the most is really serving our members. I remember the impact that state officers had on me when I was an underclassman, particularly as a freshman, and how they really poured into me and motivated me and made me want to do what they did as a state officer. And so I really look forward to doing that and connecting with members and helping them see all that FFA has to offer and the wonderful world of agriculture.
So you're going to be out there in person at events, getting the youth of FFA fired up for their future in agriculture.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I really, really look forward to that, being in person again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of folks are. And then after that, of course, you plan to go to Mizzou, study animal science. Abigail, we certainly look forward to watching your success and wish you the best in FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
I had planned to make trade as my topic this week. International trade, international agricultural trade, and then I realized I don't have 8 to 10 hours to cover the subject. But Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack this past week talked about foreign trade for agriculture. Let me share with you some of what he had to say. According to the Secretary, we need to be less reliant on 1 or 2 countries and more reliant on a number of countries. He pointed out that China, Canada, Mexico, and Japan account for more than half of U.S. farm exports. Secretary Vilsack went on to say, I think there's an over-reliance on China right now. That's a big market, a big opportunity for us. Obviously, we're much better off without a trade war than we were with a trade war with China in terms of agriculture. But that's a complicated relationship, which is what I think it's going to be more important for the administration to take a look at where there are new partnerships, new arrangements, new connections. China is forecast to be the #1 customer for American farm products this year, with purchases of $35 billion, or about 1/5 of all U.S. agricultural exports. No question that agriculture is an important issue for trade and trade agreements, because every country wants to protect its farmers and agricultural producers. So you better make sure your congressman knows how you feel and relate it to him and to the Secretary of Agriculture. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
This busy summer for us is going to get busier in the days ahead, as we were talking earlier. It's actually only about 50 days till the Farm Progress Show.
That is hard to believe, Max. It's coming up really fast.
You have other places to go between now and then.
I do. I'm very excited. It's great in 2021 to have the opportunity to get back in person with farmers, and I've got a few chances. I get to travel up to Wilmer, Minnesota on July 29th for the Partners in Ag Innovation event. Then on August 18th, it's Dakota Fest in Mitchell, South Dakota. I'll be up there with South Dakota Corn and South Dakota Farm Bureau. And then to round out the month of August, I'll be in Indiana at Hoosier Heartland State Bank in Crawfordsville. Max, it's going to be so great to connect with folks who have just made it through this growing season, looking forward to harvest, and then it's Farm Progress, and we're both going to be there in Decatur this year.
We look forward to that, to be sure. You have some wide geography to cover. They're good agriculture counties.
They really are. Good ag industry, good ag counties, a lot of good people.
Well, we look forward to being back here next weekend. We hope you'll join us, too, right here for This Week in Agribusiness with Mr. Pearson and Max Armstrong here, hoping you have a great week. So long, everyone. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.